Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In this video I'm continuing my experimental journey with paper in JDiction resin. You will see different ways of applying paper to resin for the best results, and you will also see me trying out a fabulous new hands-free resin mixer from Istoyo. If all that sounds interesting, stay tuned and enjoy the video. This is my new set of moulds from Temu and it's my first time using them. I need a template so that I can make my paper exactly the right size. So I'm filling each one with some plaster of Paris so that I have something to draw around for my paper pieces. If you've seen my previous paper in resin videos, you'll have seen me do this before, but it works really well, so it's definitely something I will carry on doing when I get new moulds and I need a template. Of course, if you're using moulds that you've used before, you can probably take the thing that you made before, if you've still got it, and draw around that. So yeah, then you won't need to do this, which is nice. I left these ones a couple of hours before demolding them because it's such a thin pour of plaster. I didn't want them to just snap in half, but yeah, they were fine. The papers I'm using today are Stamperia papers and they're from Charmed Cards and Crafts. I chose an arty theme because these are going to be for myself, for my notes to do with my videos and whatnot and my resin. So I thought an arty themed paper would work really well. I will leave a link in the video description. I selected the 3 sheets of paper that I wanted to use, and the great thing about using moulds which are translucent is you can see through them and you can put them over your paper to really see how the different parts of the paper will work in the mould. So I could just move them around and decide on the part of the paper I wanted to use and then use my templates to draw the exact shape before cutting them out. After cutting out the papers, I needed to make the holes, and for that I used my crocodile hole punch, which I've had for years and years. If they are still available, I'm guessing they still will be because they're so good. I will put a link in the video description. So I'd marked out the holes using the template and it was just a case of punching them in. Next I decided my front covers needed some embellishment, and so I had another look through my papers to see what was there, and on the inside of the front page there were all these little tags which I thought would work really well. They had lots of different sentiments and phrases on them, so I cut some of those out and tried to decide which ones I wanted for each page. When all my paper and tags were cut out and ready, I took them outside and gave all the pieces 2 coats of clear varnish on each side. Obviously you need to let each coat dry before you add the second coat. I've tried it before with 1 coat of spray varnish and I found it was a little bit patchy. Then I tried PVA glue and that was very patchy. So I've gone back to spray varnish and this time I did 2 coats to see how that would go. The reason you need to seal your paper is because it goes quite transparent and darkens when it goes into resin, and you'll never stop it completely unless you're going to completely cover your paper, like by laminating it or using sticky back plastic. But spray varnish I found works pretty well, and by doing 2 coats this time it definitely seemed to improve the finished result. Right then, what you can see me doing now is adding a split pin, or you might know it as a brad, just a nice coloured one, to the tag before adding it to the background paper with a little bit of hot melt glue. I thought the hot melt glue would help it to be just raised up a little bit to give it some dimension, but not too much because the moulds are very shallow and there isn't much space in there. I repeated that process on the middle size piece of paper, and on this one I decided to add a feather as well. I thought it looked quite nice with the feather there, and then added the tag above it. But I made a big mistake. I don't know whether you can see what it is. Shall I tell you? I've just gone over the hole that I've just cut out, and I didn't realise I'd done that until I went to put it in the resin. And then I got into a bit of a mess having to make a hole once it had resin on it. But you'll see that soon. But anyway, I think the feather looks nice, don't you? I think that really is a nice finishing touch. Once all the paper was prepared, it was time to mix the resin. And this week I have a star product to show you. It's from Istoyo and it's a cordless resin mixer. And I wasn't sure how good it would be, but I was dying to try out. So let's have a look to see what it's like. So when I took it out of the package, all the pieces were there, ready to be assembled, and they felt nice and sturdy, really good quality. There were 4 mixing paddles in there, 2 large and 2 small, depending on, the height of the cup that you're mixing in. And it also had a little silicone mat to go on the base to protect the base. And you'll see why that is handy quite soon. So first I had to just assemble it all. And that was nice and easy. So I'm going to speed through that part. And then once that was assembled, it was ready for mixing. But first I did need to charge up the mixer. The mixer is obviously rechargeable, but once you've charged it up, you can unplug it and it's cordless for as long as the energy in there lasts. And so it's nice and handy to have on the side of your table until you're ready to use it. And so once it's fully charged, all you have to do is choose a paddle, click it into the handle, and then the handle slots into the piece we've just assembled. I suppose you would call it a stand or a support. The height of the support is adjustable. All you have to do is turn that little knob on the side and make it the height you want it, and then tighten it up again. And so that's a nice little feature. Right then, let's get the resin ready. Today I'm using JDiction's High Gloss Epoxy Resin. It's a 50-50 ratio, or 1-to-1 ratio should I say, and that's by volume. So I'm just measuring them both out there, as you can see. And then all you need to do is pop it onto the base plate there, onto the silicone mat, click the mixer into position, and it's ready to go. So there's 3 buttons on there. The first one is your power button to turn it on. You've got to hold it down for a second before it goes on. And you can press it up to 3 times. It's 3 speed, so you can choose your speed. The second button is the reverse button if you want to go in the other direction. And the bottom button that you can see there is just the automatic one where you can press that and it will mix for 4 minutes and turn itself off, and you don't have to do anything else. So that one is completely hands-free. And there it goes, mixing away. So I noticed on the pictures just now when I was having a look on the website that they have the paddle right at the bottom, which would make sense because then you know that everything's getting mixed. But if you don't want to just leave it there, you can actually just clip it off and use it as a handheld mixer and make sure you've touched all the sides and the bottom of the cup if you're worried about any unmixed resin. So it's very versatile in that way. And do you know what? I actually really love this. I was really happy with the results, and yeah, I would highly recommend this one. It didn't incorporate bubbles in there either. It stayed just as clear as it was when I poured the resin in, so that was another great thing about it. So yes, thank you very much, Istoyo. I think your automatic mixer is fab. One other thing that I really love about this mixer is that when you've finished mixing and you've taken it out of the cup, you can clip it back onto the stand and all the excess resin will just drip off the paddle onto the silicone mat. So you don't have to worry about where you're going to put it for that excess resin to cure. Right, the resin is mixed. Let's make some book covers. I've got my JDiction levelling table there. I'm just covering it up so it doesn't get mucky. And we're ready. So today, because I've got 3 separate book covers, I decided to have a bit of an experiment in the way in which I apply the paper. So for this first one, what I did was I poured the resin in and then put the paper on top of the resin and sunk it down, manipulated it with my fingers until it was all pushed down and resin was on the top as well, because it will come up over the edges onto the top. And this way was definitely the messiest way. And because it was so messy and it took me a while to do, on the next one I had a different idea. So for this one, I decided to pour some resin onto the back and rub it all around until it was completely covered, and then add it to the mould. I wanted to see what that would be like. You see, my concern was I didn't want pockets of air trapped underneath, because then you end up with holes in there at the back. When you demold it, it will look lovely on the front, but not on the back. So that's what I'm doing on this one. And then once I'd got it in and pressed down, I added some more resin on the top. And yeah, it's a lot easier, but we will see what happens when I demold them. So the second one seemed to go quite smoothly, so I tried again on the third one in the same way, but the different thing I did with this third one was after coating the back of the paper, I added some more resin underneath. I just didn't fully cover it like I did with the first one. I just did a puddle underneath with the thought of just squashing it all out until it reached the edges and it came over the top. That way it wouldn't be as full as it was with the first one and it wouldn't make as much mess. So yeah, this is all just experiments to find out which way works the best. And it was at this stage that I realised I'd covered up the hole in my paper and I had to get my crocodile hole cutter back, and while it was all sticky, I had to make another hole. But it was all right, I managed it. And with this one, you can see already, if you look at the skin on the lady, how it's starting to darken. That is what happens when you put paper in resin, it will darken. Even though I sealed it really well, it still does soak into the paper. But the good thing is that because I used the spray varnish, it will soak in evenly everywhere. You won't get patches where it's soaked in and patches where it hasn't. So yeah, it does still make an improvement. I did an experiment I showed in the first paper in resin video I did. I'll have to get it up to show you, where I compared the paper that had been spray varnished with the paper that hadn't been spray varnished. And even though it does still darken with the sealing with the spray varnish, it's not as bad as if you hadn't done it at all. So yeah. So in a roundabout way, I was just telling you that by spray varnishing it, it will still darken, but not as much. And because this paper wasn't tall enough to fit the height of the mould, I'm putting some glass glitter at the top and the bottom to fill that gap. So that's what you can see me just doing here. And going back to the subject of sealing, I know somebody will say, why didn't you just laminate it? Well, the thing is, when you laminate something, you've got to leave a border around the edge of it. Otherwise, the resin will seep between the 2 layers of laminate. So it needs to have a sealed border around the edge. And that would have been extremely tricky with this. Not only would I have had a clear border around the edge, I could have lived with that. But what about those holes? That would have been very tricky to do without leaving spaces for that resin to get in through the layers of laminate. So yeah, if you've used laminate before, lamination pouches with a laminating machine, you will understand what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you might wonder what the heck I'm going on about, but trust me, I don't think it would work well with this. Right then, let's see which of those 3 techniques worked the best. This is the one where I just coated the back of the paper with resin and put it straight onto the mould. Let's have a look at the back. Right. When I change the angle, you'll be able to see, there we go. There are holes all over the back. It looks like Swiss cheese. And that's what happens when you get pockets of air trapped. So that method definitely didn't work. So let's have a look at this one. This was the first one I did, the messiest technique, where I just filled with the mould with the resin and sunk the paper into it. And that one was perfect on the back, no problems at all. So yeah, unfortunately, it looks like the messy way is looking at like it's the best way. Let's have a look at this one. Now this one, I put resin on the back of the paper, like with the middle-sized one, but I also put a puddle of resin under there, and it's a lot better, but I still got one air pocket. So yeah, I think next time I do this, I'm going to stick with the messiest option, which is fill your mould first with the resin, layer your paper on dry paper on top, and just let it gently sink down and manipulate it if needed. But that was definitely the best result when I did the first one, the small one. So yeah, that experiment was a success because I learned something from it. So next I just used my deburring tool to clean up the edges and make sure there were no bits sticking out and no sharp bits as well. After I'd used my deburring tool, I also used my nail file just to make sure it was completely smooth. The deburring tool's really good for getting rid of bits of resin that are sticking out. Really, really good. But, you know, it doesn't smooth it down quite as well as a nail file does. Right then, for those 2 pages that had the air pockets behind them, I decided I wanted to just cover them with some patterned paper, just to make life easy. But with this one especially, I felt like I couldn't just put paper on top. I needed to fill those holes a little bit. And so I got some of JDiction's low viscosity UV resin and just carefully filled all the holes so I had a flat solid surface with no holes in there to attach my paper to. So this is optional. If this ever happens to you, you can just stick paper on the back. But I wanted a smoother surface to stick my paper on. Applying the paper is very easy. All you have to do is choose your patterned paper, draw around it, or around your book cover that you've made to make sure you've got it the perfect size, and stick it on with glue stick. I just use paper crafting glue stick and it works fine at gluing paper to resin. I did this with this one and the largest one. It was a shame on the largest one because I really loved the patterned paper on the inside. Yeah, it was a shame, but never mind. It was still nice with the patterned paper on, and you'll see that shortly. I think it's quite good when things go wrong in my videos because it really gives me a chance to show you how you can deal with the problem if it occurs, and this is a really effective way of dealing with the problem because it will occur at some point. You will get air pockets. So anyway, once they were all sorted out, I decided to paint the edges with gold pen, and that just brought it to life and gave it a bit of an extra special finishing touch. Before I used my gold marker, I sanded all the edges just with my nail file. It's nice and easy, but if you do that, I find that the pen sticks to it much better, it bonds better. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you've got a straight edge like this and you're using gold marker or any other colour, to give it a bit of a sanding first, because with it being straight, it's really easy and it makes a really big difference. The marker I'm using is a chrome marker from Let's Resin. So I repeated this process for all my pieces and for the back pieces too, and you're going to see me make the back pieces next. Right then, so for the back pieces, I mixed up my resin. I put a little bit of the resin in one pot for the glass glitter, which I'm going to use. And then in the other 3 pots, I had equal amounts. I'm adding Lores, I think it's Lores Teal pigment paste from Laura's Art Corner to this one. And then for the next ones, I've got I think it was Crystal White and Mint Blue, and they're from Arteza, and they're just mica powders. If you're a regular viewer on my channel, you will know that I've mentioned before I'm not a big fan of glitter. I like it in some cases, but I don't use it very often. However, glass glitter is on a different level. I love glass glitter, and that's what I've got there. It's like a teal turquoisey colour, and that works well with what I'm doing today. And the reason I like it is because it stays in place and it's not too sparkly like normal glitter is. So yeah, I just love it. It's sparkly but in a nice way. So I'm not going to spend too long on this. I kept it very simple, and the video is starting to get quite long, longer than I expected it to be. But basically what I did was I applied the glittery epoxy resin down the spines of the covers, and then just puddle poured the rest of the colours, and that's it really. I just plonked them all in because these are going at the back, and I wasn't too worried about how they would look, so I didn't do anything too fancy. Do be careful if you're making book covers like this not to add too much resin. Let it find its place before you add more. I added too much, and I ended up having to spend quite a long time with my syringe taking out some of the resin because I overfilled them. Okay, it's time to take these out of the moulds now. I did a coaster as well with the leftover resin because you don't want to waste resin, do you? So I always have one of me coaster moulds handy. And this one turned out kind of dull, actually. I don't know whether that mould was a bit dull. It might be seeing the end of its days, that mould. But yeah, it came out quite dull. It was more likely, actually, thinking about it, because I put white in first, and yeah. It's nice though, it's all right. It's a good way of using up your leftover resin anyway, isn't it? So let's see what these are like on the other side. So the results are quite subtle, but I quite like it. They've got like a cloudy effect, haven't they? The colours are just subtle, and yeah, I'm quite happy with them. It's nothing fancy, is it? But it works, and it makes a nice back cover. So there we have the 3 back covers and a bookmark, because I still had some excess resin. You will see it all better soon. Let's get on with the next step. Right then, it's time for the paper. I purchased these from Temu. They're just the notebook refills. But you know what? I had to shop around. I found that they're really expensive. It just puts you off wanting to make your own notebooks when they're so expensive. So that's why I ended up getting them from Temu and having quite a long wait. If any of you know a cheaper place to buy them, please let me know, because the price to me seems to be ridiculous for what they are. Anyway, I'm squeezing them together as you can see here, and using my chrome marker again. Sorry, it's bad focus. I'm trying my other camera on this bit, and I need to work out about the autofocus. It keeps going a bit cloudy. Anyway, I'm squeezing the paper together and my pen's running out. I keep shaking it and just painting along the sides with the pen, because I quite like the paper to have those gold edges. I think it just gives it that extra finishing touch. So I won't film any more of that because it took a while, but I was glad I did it because it really made it look nice. Once I'd painted the gold edges on all of my paper and let it dry, it was time to assemble my books. I'm using some book rings, which just open up and then click together, and they're quite easy to do. So it's just a case of threading them through, clipping them closed, and there you are. Bob's your uncle. I don't know if that's a local saying. Tell me, do you say Bob's your uncle where you live? Or is that a local saying? I don't know who Bob is and whose uncle it is. But yeah, Bob's your uncle and it's done. Isn't it funny how we all have local sayings and phrases, and sometimes I say things and I wonder to myself if anyone will know what I'm talking about, or if it's something that's known worldwide. I really don't know. Yeah, it's a funny old world, isn't it? So we're nearly done. Are you ready? Are you ready to see them all together? Yeah, I am. It's been a long video and I'm ready to show you the finished results. Here we go. Okay then, so this one is by far my favourite. I love the paper that I used in this one, and I think it just looks beautiful. Even the back looks lovely when the sun's shining on it, doesn't it? So yeah, really happy with that. And there's the paper I put on the inside. It's not as nice as the paper that would have been there if the back hadn't gone wrong. But yeah, it's all done. Let's have a look at the next one. Again, I like that one, and I like the paper I put on the inside. I think the design on the front goes well with the set. They all go well together because the papers were all from the same collection, so they're already well coordinated. And I like this little notebook one with the, not notebook one, I like the little mini one with the mannequin on the front. I love those little artists' mannequins, so yeah, I'm happy with that one as well. Well, this was a long video and it was quite a journey, but I learned so much and I really hope it's been helpful to you as well. If you have enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed and you would like to, please subscribe as well, and I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching and bye for now.